Omampeni, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the bold and direct speech I will deliver in front of world leaders few days ago at the UN General Meeting. In fact, they are somewhere back. Israel ambassador will reply. Openi Farouk Wahab, and so say Debida, or no so every Beja no so or she and Samagu honum. Omampeni Kasa Yemono, Obobon Semba Kumi Nubiso, na Bakopane say in the next 2050, Africa is the future. This platform, the Nation Anchor, Yababa and Seminim. Keep in touch. Abusia, my member called by Fambra the Nation's Anchor TV. So thank you so much. Abribia Oje Brena with me on this particular platform on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok. I really appreciate your support, liking, sharing, expressing your opinion at the comment section. In fact, very soon we will hit our 20,000 subscribers. This community is fastly growing. It is a union subscriber a community. No one hit on the subscribe button, turn on the notification so that you don't miss any of our updates. On this platform, we don't follow trend. We face reality. And for episode is going to be reality. Now, and then come on, a few days ago, when the man penny, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, called the UN General Meeting, or 80th anniversary, it delivered a bold and direct, fantastic speech, right direct to world leaders whilst they are sitting there. In fact, on penny Kasa on the continent Africa, you could see the joy and the proudness everywhere. Now, once a certain point to be our hit hard in Tino, ama there has been reaction from certain world leaders as well, particularly over Israel and Palestine, since the injustices going on there. Omampeni John Dramani Mahama etuja ekohonum. Israel ambassador neni anje ho obabonte ebetuto fire. Na ne fire na ba echire no openi Farouk Wahab si there bi enyanhwe han tenase emamo fa ese kan enya nanka openi Farouk Wahab so tisi beja sada no so obehwie nsamagu ho no mo a ebeba wura ni nyinam ebeba openi Farouk Wahab video no amamo tie nsama o de bae ne angle ne the perspective no so e di free e de bae eno aso ha openi John Dramani Mahama talk so kan say Africa eba ne wiase security sense mo UN General Assembly no penifo ahodo amotena se bobo na Africa a representative eni so yenso ye kan wiase de ho no enya asem a asem de enti Ghana will lead or Ghana will champion a petitioner ebe call for say there should be an African representative on that UN General Security Council or whatever. No, there should be an African representative on that board. Very fantastic from the president. And last but not the least, Omampeni John Dramani Mahama also say, Usha and they said the in the next 2050, African youth will stay on African continent, and Africa is the future. If the world leaders don't know whether they like it or yes, Africa is the future. Omampeni Asamo boss they are picking up from the realistic point of view, not from fallacy point of view, not from favoritism point of view, from realistic point of view. And okay, Africa stands or have that potential of, becoming in the next 50 years. As some of the say a representative of UN General Meeting, General Assembly, a speech of Kasano, just a talk show. And I say, Kasa after Kasano, action be ADHD. Not from the realistic point of view, the nation anchor breaking it down when I say this is what this is what I've taken upon myself to do to serve my community on these platforms. Intimacy Roger Young Conco Omampeni John Dramani Mahama Kakra, it's any we are, Penny Farouk Wahab, and Sama no so the betuja, the Babu. Near we are the nation anchor from my realistic point of view as a concerned citizen and as an African for that matter. No, so made them a point about. Also, I will share me also bet me the ones who are going to the comment section. But don't forget, share this video to others for others to also understand or know what is going on.
The Assembly.
Thank you, Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. At this 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly, I'd like to speak about Africa's role in the future of this organization. However, it's impossible to do that without first considering the collective role that Africa played in its founding, which was small and relatively insignificant. Of the 51 member states involved in the founding of the United Nations in 1945, only 4 were African: Egypt, Ethiopia, Liberia, and South Africa. It is important to point out that the United Nations came into being in the aftermath of World War II because of the inability of its predecessor, the League of Nations, to avert a large-scale global conflict, which had been its guiding purpose when it was founded in 1920 at the end of the First World War. Out of the 42 founding member states of the League of Nations, only 3 were African: Liberia, the Union of South Africa, and Ethiopia. Egypt was to join later in 1937. Africa's overall participation in the organization's founding was minimal and relatively unimportant. That's because before all the other talks and meetings, representatives from a group of 14 nations gathered in Berlin for a series of discussions that began in 1884 and which led to the partitioning and formal colonization of the African continent, which is also called the Scramble for Africa. It has famously been written that past is prologue. Well, in the past, the majority of the 54 nations that now comprise Africa were never offered a seat at the table where plans for a new world order were being drawn. But, Madam President, as fate would have it, the tables are turning, and Africa's role in the authorship of whatever is yet to come for this world is going to be huge, and it will be consequential. According to this organization's own projections, by the year 2050, more than 25% of the world's population is expected to come from the African continent. Additionally, by 2050, 1/3 of all young people aged between 15 to 24 will be residing on the African continent. So you see, the future of this world is African. Allow me to say this once again a little louder for those of you in the back. The future is African. Already today, Africa is a catalyst for human potential and development, as well as for economic reform and ecological stability. Africa is a catalyst for systemic change. If this reality, which is fact-based and straightforward, seems provocative or unsettling, perhaps it's because you are viewing it through the lens of centuries of filters, colonialism and imperialism, and the resulting implicit bias. Maybe you are unaware of the resilience of African nations or their remarkable ability to make a strong comeback just when you think it's safe to count them out. Madam President, the UN Founding Charter is outdated when it comes to representation in this August Assembly. The most powerful post-World War II nations are still being rewarded with an almost totalitarian guardianship over the rest of the world. And yet, the first sentence in Chapter 2, Article 1 of the UN Charter declares that the organization is based on the principle of sovereign equality of all its members. If this were true, and was the case, a continent as large as Africa, with its numerous UN member states, would have at least one permanent seat on the Security Council. Furthermore, we believe that veto power should not be restricted to only 5 nations, nor should it be absolute. There must be a mechanism in this House for the General Assembly to challenge a veto. No single nation should be able to exercise an absolute veto to serve its own interests in a dispute. In 1995, during the 50th anniversary of the United Nations, Nelson Mandela stood in this very spot. And he said, the United Nations has to reassess its role, redefine its profile, and reshape its structures. It should truly reflect the diversity of our universe and ensure equity among the nations in the exercise of power within the system of international relations in general, and the Security Council in particular. I close quotations. 30 years later, we African leaders are still making the same simple request for a permanent seat on the Security Council with the power of a veto. So today, Madam President, I stand here in this exact spot and ask the world, if not now, then when?
President John Dramani Mahama talked about a number of things, but I mean, first of all, before we get into the breakdown of the issues he discussed, first of all, 80 years on, United Nations General Assembly, would you say Africa, Ghana has been a beneficial of these successive congresses that we've held in the past?
Well, I mean, one would say that yes, they've achieved a lot of, let me call it some heights. But then it has begun to become more or less gradually and increasingly a weaker organization as it used to be before, comparatively. The reason being that some bigger nations, more or less, they've started and began swallowing UN. UN had become just, let me call it, an existing tool, an organization ordinarily, which has put the whole world together. Undoubtedly, they have achieved some goals, some aims, but greatly, I think the organization 80 years faces very, 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 very bad situation as compared to when, since its inception or some 20 years ago. Reason being that some countries disrespect the UN with impunity, and the UN is biteless, they can't bite. A lot of countries have taken unilateral decisions and went their way and did a lot of things UN could not until now. And then UN itself is also meddled itself with selective, call it, either selective justices or certain countries are pampered babies, which are used either as cash cow for the UN itself, or some countries are being taken as UN's pampered kids, whereas others are completely are not in the books of the UN. So if you look at it from that angle, you put it up in summary form, I would say that UN has not lived to the expectations. 80 years, one would have seen the maturity of a man born 80 years, the sense and then also the wisdom. So if at 80 years, if not sickness, and the father or a man in 80 years right now, you realize that maybe his thinking abilities, everything becomes, that is compared to the human structure in human body and mental retardedness. So let's look at an organization which increasingly are developing methods, creating wild and extra more commissions, putting offices, commission upon commission. UN used to have umbrella groups, about 6. The UNICEF, the UNHCR, the FAO, the UNDP, the major ones. But now that one would say that we have gotten a lot of umbrella groups that are supporting the UN, that should make the work more efficient. Look at the Medicine Sans Frontières, look at a whole lot of international organizations that are directly working on the UN. That is not the UN that one should be seeing. This is not a UN that all over the world. There's fight everywhere, started everywhere. So for me, in summary, UN 80 years, it's weaker than 50 years ago, weaker than 20 years ago, increasingly depleting its strength, and then its authority on countries. And very soon, in the next 5-10 years, if it goes like this, I'll be very much afraid if even the United Nations General Assembly, one is called, and any country will respond. Because countries feel that they are isolated, some are assisted, some are isolated. So 80 years of UN, much as they've achieved some aim, greater, they haven't done anything to me. My estimation.
I see. President Mahama condemned the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and the denial of visas to Palestinian leaders. How significant is this constructive criticism coming from an African head of state, especially on the UN stage?
You see, if I were to be on the podium, ideally I was invited to go with the Vanuatu delegation. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it. Okay. Every year I go on the strength of Vanuatu or the Pacific nations, and I go into the chamber. Ideally, I would have given my president a thumbs up, right? Why? Ghana's position with the UN has been very consistent. We've been very consistent on enhancing global peace and security for sustainable and then what? Sustainable security for the world and inclusive development. That has been the Ghana's position.
Okay.
Ghana's position had also been a global fighter and support of what? A climate and all that. But then back to a country where he made mention specifically humanitarian crisis in two notable countries. One, Darfur, Sudan, and then two, the Palestine. The president couldn't have made that opportunity without setting the stage. And that is what I expected when the Ghanaian president mounts the stage. These are some of the issues that we'll be dealing with. Not to mix yourself up into world politics. As happened, the last UN General Assembly attended by the former president, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, where he declared and made a statement which actually didn't receive any applause, that Ukraine and Russia, every bomb that hit on Ukraine target affects the pocket of Africans.
Okay.
But he didn't do the reverse entry that any Ukrainian bomb that hits on target of Russia also increases or enriches the African's pocket. So you look at the dynamics. You don't go out. The president was very direct on the African issue. And the African issue, why he worked amidst catastrophic humanitarian situation over Palestine, for instance. He first mentioned of Sudan. Then he brought in Palestine because Palestinian state was recognized by the African Union.
Yeah.
And for that matter, Ghana was the strength behind all this. And we gave Yasser Arafat an honorary member of the African Union, whereas it has no other organization. So ideally, it is incumbent on the neck of every Ghanaian president to make mention of anything. Let us not forget, since the inception of UN, and since Ghana joined the UN in 1957, we've had the chance to be members on the UN Security Council. We've been there between 1962-63, we were a member for 2 years. We've been there in 1986-87, 2006 and 2007, and then lastly was 2002, 2023, 2022. Look at when Ghana, Madam Ayoko, or His Excellency, the President of the Republic, made mention of two-state solution for, what's the name, Palestine and then Israel. Israeli ambassador in Ghana here warned Ghana president over utterances, as he refers it.
Yeah.
Which is not acceptable. But I think President Mahama, he has done me a great job and he has really posited Africa on a very respectful listen because most Africans would dare not even touch that dial, especially on the soil of the United States. And for that matter, if the president sets the tone for the Africans to discuss about it, he is saying that yes, there is selective with regard to the situation. But currently, as we speak, the biggest refugee exodus inland displaced people in Sudan, over 12 million. Look at it from that angle. What has UN done? Virtually nothing. UN is doing nothing about it. No other country is doing about it. But then when there's an issue that bothers in a small country, certain Israel and some other jurisdictions, in the reference of President Mahama, Ukraine, should anybody tell me, post-World War, what is the West and Western world? What are they earning, gaining, getting from Ukraine? But look at the monies and the emphasis that have gone in there. At the end of the day, UN follows up and turns out with the European Union and their direction and their interest. It's a colonialism against Afroism. So if the president is speaking of Afroism, he's being very much on the point that yes, you can be selective, and yes, humanitarian he position it, and that is the Ghana stand. Whoever takes it, any of the Western, and I know Israel ambassador will just counter or make a comment of it. We are waiting. And president has really made it very clear. And to me, among all the podiums that he has lectured on, the world security in Munich this year, that is in somewhere in February, in March, I was at the podium. We happened to be in the same hotel with His Excellency the President. So we attended. We were over there, he delivered. But this is the catch. Telling the Western leaders from the face, something most African leaders will not do.
Yeah.
That you cannot do that. You can't leave Sudan and then not only be interested in Ukraine. You can't leave Palestine and be interested in Ukraine. I think The subject was well mentioned, and I think it was well delivered, and he delivered on point.
I see.
That shows the maturity level of our president.
I agree. From where I sit as a journalist, President Mahama's speech seemed to signal a more assertive African stance on global justice and equity issues. If so, how might that reshape global diplomacy, for that matter, the country called Ghana?
Well, let me tell you for fact, some of us we've been mission translator for UN herself as a body for longer years. We've been most of all these year missions. We've worked with Mrs. Ogata, Ms. Annan, and Okofian and all that. So we do have an experience about how the UN herself as a body operates. Now, it's a speech well delivered. Whether the Europeans or the Western leaders call it the global power, whether they see it, it is in that podium the Africans, the Asian Caucasus, the Caribbean Caucasus, the Pacific, and the entire ACP member country. Each one of them will rise and clap. Are you getting me? The Europeans, fine. The non-aligned ones or the liberal governments within Europe, not the Christian Democrats or the far-right government, they would all clap. But that should be initiated. Put that one into commitment. That initiative being put into commitment, that is what's the question mark. Because Guterres himself, they don't listen to him. Americans don't listen to Guterres. UK, British don't listen to him to some extent. Even imagine a global power, no other country like a superpower like France. I believe you've heard how the French President Macron was being treated on the streets of New York, like any ordinary person, with disrespect and impunity. So in such messages, while you can drum home, as the president has done it, but shaping or changing the global or have any dynamics to do with the global politics or the shape of direction of the UN, at the end of the day, I can still tell you that in as much as we have only 6 permanent Security Council members, and then 3 of them strongly they are having a veto power to veto anything, and then they are also having the right, also maltreating countries that they feel they can, and also taking unilateral decisions against the wish and the will of the UN. It continues to be as such. Yes, he has done well. The Africans must unite together strongly once more and present herself on the global platform, interface with the UN, which to me, when you meet them or you see them at the podium, the power is a bit less. Why? But we having the biggest continental level in terms of participation and the 183, 190 countries with flags. The bloc is Africa. 56 nations are in there. 54 solid members, except St. Anthony and some few countries that haven't got the magnitude to be members of the UN. Even with that, they recognize some of the UN charter and resolutions, etc. But a membership of 54, how is the size of the whole Europe? 48 members, the whole Europe. How many Asia? How many does the Caribbean and etc. bring on board? Australia, the Oceania. How many members do they bring on board? We are the strongest. So if it comes to decision, I've mentioned that the UN herself as a body is very biased, without any reservation, without anything. Because one, block the whole Africa. Something Gaddafi has ever raised it on the podium. Nelson Mandela has ever raised it before. Kwame Nkrumah then at that time raised it. And then some few Pan-Africanists have raised it. Look, we are not members, we don't have a permanent member with the UN Security Council. Who are the permanent with the United States, the United Kingdom, and then the France, the China, the Russia, and then I think now the India. So if these are permanent, where is the African continent represented? We only call him as an honorary member for 1 year or 2 years, and even with that, when we have the chance to chair the Security Council, none of our message is being taken. Even at the time Mr. Kofi Annan, no African had the chance to be what? To be a security member. Whereas we have Boutros Ghali, Mr. Kofi Annan succeeding one after another, all African UN Secretary Generals. We couldn't be present. So what I'm saying is that there should be a strong proposal for the entire continent to say that, look, we are also a superpower when you put us one in a block. So Africa, we don't need to be called 2 years. That Ghana comes 2 years, you come, you bring Gabon. And cleverly what they do, anytime they will select an African party African country to be part of a temporary, call it an honorary membership or temporary member of the UN Security Council, they normally will pledge that African country against another when they are voting. The one that Ghana won 2022, Ghana was played against Gabon, Albania, and Brazil. Look at how they did it. They pick Europe, they pick South America, and then they pick two Africans, fight with each other. It doesn't work. So Africa must have a confrontational stand and tell the UN that we are also 56. We don't want any individual country. We represent as one bloc. Africa must have a permanency with the UN Security Council.
I see.
When it happens like that, then we'll be able to fight for Sudan. We'll be able to fight for Congo. We'll be able to fight for individual countries because we can also take decisions on the table of the Council of the Security. But in a situation where they meet, and it's always West-West, France, America, and UK decision is what is taking. French, the Chinese, and the Russians, they cannot veto anything. So it just go on the right side, and all the time Africans left off hook, and we are left just alone. In my view, messages like that from President Mahama should rather ignite the OAU, that is the African Union, for them to do more and have one unified state, devoid of any Western influences, and present Africa continent as one member. If we happen to be there, there would be a lot of things that could be solved as far as the UN Security Council and the world policy and the world order as well as concerned. After the UN Security Council and the UN Secretary General, there's nothing they could do for any country in Africa.
Fantastic. And I'm glad that you've talked about what the African Union can also do. So, I mean, from what President Mahama talked about, I mean, no wonder he received applause from union members. It suggests that the UN is ready to take some reforms to reshape the UN 80 years on. What do you think, or what reforms would you suggest to us here in Africa, especially the African borders, the African Union, to also deal with some of these matters, conflicts, economic instability, political instability, and all that?
Look, because I understand the UN system very much, because the food that I eat, since I was 20 years, 21, I've been with their system, so I understand what it is.
Okay.
Look at it from the dynamics of contributions to the UN fund. Yes, America says yes, we contribute more according to sizes of economy of countries. But let us not forget that when you box all those things together, because American time was in so that is why they have a fair share and greater things that they do, unilateral decisions, UN cannot talk. But come to terms with countries like Peru, the Latin America, Peru, El Salvador, San Salvador, name them, Colombia and all that. Their contribution has nowhere closer, the Latin Central American countries.
Okay.
Their contribution doesn't come anywhere closer to Africa. UN greatly, their contributions quota on the neck of every country. When you box it together, 56, 54 African countries, our contribution is very big. But when it comes to humanitarian crisis, look at UN's responses. Look at UN's responses to Liberia during the genocide. When even the American President Jimmy Carter at that time had stepped forward that he wanted to move and solve the problem of Liberia, and he even wanted a special envoy to oppress because he understood the story of Africa and for that matter Liberia, UN left him alone. The man fought alone without assistance and the support. Yet, when Liberia at the same time, when Rwanda at the same time, and the Yugoslavia war broke out, look at the world response. How the British, how the Americans, how the French, all of them in the breakaway Republic of Yugoslavia against Serbia. That they claimed that Serbia was maltreating Kosovo Albanians, Montenegro, Dubrovnik, and all things. The Srebrenica uprising, Sarajevo uprising, the massacre. Look at the response of Europe. Look at the response of the United States of America. Look at the response of France. All of them were there in no time. Let us not forget, at that time, there was a genocide in Sierra Leone by Sanko. He was amputating left, right, center. Chachela was amputating left, right, center. Rwanda was inflamed. Pierre Boyaya was also misbehaving in Bongi in Central African Republic. What about Burundi? Africa, but 13 countries, especially in the Katanga provinces, all of them were inflamed. What did UN do? It was left in the hands of Africans fighting, turning ourselves until we were tired and stopped. UN didn't come there Sorry, no, they didn't come there. The time UN came, the Sanko had was based in Kono, Kenema, destroying Punjab to Freetown, destroying the whole country. So now, therefore, if we are saying that the UN reforms, if we are to advise the UN, nobody is to advise UN, my brother. UN knows what they stand for reforms. But then their reforms, their reformations and reforms, does it affect America or enhance America? Answer is no. They cannot decide. Does it reform France? No. When France, a lot of things that they're doing against their own African colonies by the French. Have you ever heard the UN Security Council, the UN as a body, telling the French that grant them and leave them the rest of the independence that is in your hands. Grant them the 100 and let them have their self-determination then also act as a country. Did you see that? Have you heard that? No. It's a story different from the United Kingdom, how they also treat some of the islands, some of the countries in Africa indirectly. Has anybody spoken? No. So the reforms is not anything that is hanging in the air. UN is very much aware of what kind of reform, but then it's just a tea party and talk show. The UNGA, the United Nations General Assembly, when they meet, well, of course, thankfully, Ghana is one country. I don't know now that President Mahama has seen them, whether the lobbyists, as it is termed, would allow Ghana to speak on the podium, because mostly some of the countries selected, about 4. Ghana will speak first all the time, since Kwame Nkrumah's time. Even our military leaders in uniform were speaking at the UN General Assembly. Undoubtedly, they respect Ghana and respect our views, because we are very peace aligned with any other country in the world. Then sometimes Nigeria, sometimes South Africa, and maybe Egypt or one country. That's all. So Ghana has a position. But then how Gaza will be able to impact, and the UN's reform must see Africa as a collective union proper and present a proposal for reform that will rather benefit Africa than always going out there and it's a talk show. Then we wait for next year, September, the story will be the same.
Wahab, thank you so much for your time. I'm great.
Right. I could share videos soon in Abba, and thank you so much for keeping in touch till now. So we share movie. Now, before some coming, let me give our president a kudos for delivering such bold and direct statement. Kudos to the president. Mifriwa, Mamima Openi Farouk Wahab, I mean, respect in you always kill it. I mean, you always give it to us. You give the breakdown. You always give it to us realistically as it is. And I really appreciate all your effort through all these chapters or through all these conversations. Thank you so much for your in-depth analysis when it comes to diplomatic and issues at large. Thank you so much for your service to our country. Now, massively, only media dancers said this is not the first time African leader be call UN General Meeting. I could deliver a fantastic speech. Opening Farouk Wahab Kasano. Or can I say it has become a talk show. Nelson Mandela Kambi. Mention them. Ghana President Ahudwo, Jerry John Rawlings, Kwame Nkrumah. Mention them. Kofi Annan. Mention them. I mean, Professor Mills Kofor, His Excellency former President Akufo-Addo, and John Mahama. This is not the first time. African leaders have been going to the general meeting or UN general meeting, delivering speeches after speeches, speeches upon speeches, and at the end of the day, it seems we the Africans, they then say, "Yeman penny and I say representative biako for the dead, then they boy some sha. But the reality is, to say the platform way. Your conversation, is about realistic point of view, and I say reality, The reality is, after those fantastic and bold speeches, what happens? After say, your man penny and I say your representatives or your leaders are called UN General Meeting, I could deliver a fantastic, a bold, use the grammars or use all the English words. I mean, using I could deliver ye. Now your boy and some sha. Why are they? What happens? One thing your leaders don't realize and come to it and say, bro, focus on every Africans in a day because mentally, you need to be brofo intelligent. A brofo no, ubejina omani maka brofo de no enya omwadi hu bi abiem. But after sa wakasa wie no, the effectiveness of asama okan ye no, they don't enyo omu because omu nim say de oba be yen kasa na oba be kasa. Oba kasa wie a omanfo ani beje say president akwa kasa. Okasa wi asa enkosi aga. Because all this concern that Yaman Penny John Dramani Mahama is raising in the, it has been raised before. Or more raising pen. Previous leaders or previous speakers on the at the UN General Meeting from various African countries, Kenya, Nigeria, Ghana, talking about reparation, Africa getting reparation from slave trade, blah 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 blah. His Excellency former President Akufo-Addo Suko bisa last year. Ebia, for the sake of short memory, much of you munim Akufo-Addo Suko General UN General Council and as a general meeting, I say Eko can say it has gotten to a point I was say abrofun tier reparation be because of slave trade in church Kabima Akufo-Addo Aboso pay. It is not the first time. Obo so kasa we can the of we and kusi say and kusiaga. It for me, from a realistical point of view, the Eman Penia can yes, the etasumu, and so be I won't say kusi say the ordinary talk show na. The West African leaders realizing they say ye di kind board dam free. Let me start from say Security, Council, UN Security Council. There is no African rep on that board. They tell say Uber on the continent of Africa now. Ewia say said the muka muhu bom na mumu ye du na muhu ye hu and ma bonten so for recognize mu and acknowledge mu consider mu in anything. Say ewura fie bim na fie na ewura mu no entawantawa ne menteme wanse wo fie ni nka bom ni fie ni mu a obi abo ewura fie ni ma on respect mu on fam serious. Enti let's come back home. Africa as a country, African Union, how responsible or how active or how reasonable or how serious is the African Union is. African Union, how serious are they? Do they have a vision? Do they have plans? When it comes to African Union, our security, look at all the insecurities going on, conflict happening on the continent Africa. Have the African Union been able to come together, take a drastic measures to solve these problems? So one kasa one tenefie and sa ho ya na so one kasa one tenefie and to fie ye. Now we expect this abonten so ni and infra bonten be to fie ye ma. As an African leaders, our proud motive or our topmost priority is not about making sure we build a strong security force as a continent, making sure we have a strong body as an African Union, making sure we are dealing with various, challenges, insecurities, security threats, making sure we are dealing it on our own, on our continent. We are not able to do that with our so-called African Union. We are not able to do that. How do we expect the world to acknowledge us or to take us serious and involve us in terms of any security measures or any security board? Let us be real over here. As a continent, Africa, Yankasa, Nigeria, look at what is happening in Nigeria. Look at what is happening in Sudan and others. Congo, recently in Congo. So ask yourself, say, as an African, as a continent, as a body, how have we been able to put our security measures or come together, form a formidable security structures so that we settle or we deal with our own security or our own internal security threats or problems? If we're not being able to do that, don't expect the world to recognize or to acknowledge you or to take you serious in terms of any security decisions or discussions. No. Because most of the insecurities and the security threats, conflict going on the continent Africa, if you look at those that are trying to help us, we are just sitting there and waiting for the world to come, United Nations to come in. We are waiting for the world to intervene. That is why it got to a point, the Sahel region, Ibrahim Traore, led by Ibrahim Traore, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali, realized that African leaders or the ECOWAS or African Union are not serious about anything concerning the well-being of Africans, and for that matter, they have to boycott and bogus whatever going on there and form their own thing to fight their own challenge. If African Union is able or are able to put themselves together very well and then put things in the right place, we wouldn't have gotten to a point of having Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, deciding to go the direction they are going now. So please, to the reasonable Ghanaian or African watching me, if the world don't include us or don't involve us in security boards or security councils or blah, 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 as our president is saying that Ghana is going to champion that petition for African to represent on that security board now, we have to sit home, put ourselves together very well so that the world can see how serious we are. A lot of things happening on our continent today. We are waiting for the intervention of the Europeans and Americans. They should come in. Hunger issues, diseases, economic challenges. We are waiting for the world to come and help us. We are not ready to put ourselves together to fight or to battle to fight our own battle. Until when it comes to that, unless maybe our leaders just go there to tell them something for them to see that they've come here to speak. And yes, let's start from home. How strong is our African Union? How strong is our ECOWAS? How strong are we internally? We are not that strong. We are not responsible. We are not active. We ourselves, Yankasa, we ourselves as Africans, we don't value ourselves. We expect the white man to value us. That is one side. Let me put that aside. Our president went on to say that Africa, in the next 2050, Africa is the future. You see, Africa is the future is also something that is not new to some of us, unless maybe short memory or more short memory. No, and you can say Africa is the future. Before from the last 30 years ago, somebody said that. Not even 30 years ago, our former president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, may he rest in peace. He said that the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. Some 50 or almost getting to 100 years ago, he said that the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. I am asking a question. We are in 2025, okay? How many years now since he made that statement? Can you tell me that we are indeed capable of managing our own affairs? Can you tell me economically, security-wise, food, health? Let's be realistic over here. Can you tell me we are capable of managing our own affairs? Are we managing our own affairs? No, I'm asking all of us. Let us be real here. Let me know your opinion at the comment section. Is this the first time Penny Bika say Africa is the future? No. Yaman Penny that Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said, yes, the black man is capable of managing his own affairs. Are we indeed managing our own affairs? In terms of our education, are we the one in charge? In terms of our economically, are we the one in charge? Are we in charge of our economics? The economy of our countries? Health-wise, security, are we in charge? So up to today, the black man is not yet in charge of his own affairs. No. Our resources, are we in charge of our resources? No. Now come to Africa is the future. Africa is the future. Spare me that slogan. African leaders should spare us that slogan. It has become, a math talk. Africa is the future. What are we doing that is portraying out there that, yes, indeed, Africa is the future? Or we are just saying it for saying sake? Oh my goodness. I want people to reason from a realistic perspective, as some of us do, not from a hallucination or illusional point of view or perspective. As it stands right now, the vibrant and the energetic youth of Africa today, you will get 6 out of 10 who are eagerly ready to leave the continent, whether by whatever means, whether by sea, by land, by whatever means. You get 6 out of 10 African youth that are ready to do whatever it takes to leave the continent. It tells you how hopeless our leaders have rendered us, and for that matter, we all want to leave the continent to go and seek for greener pastures elsewhere. And you come and stand and tell me Africa is the future. This Africa is the future was said some years ago. If let's say I won't take you far. Last 50 years ago, they said it. By 2020, Africa is the future. By 2010, Africa is the future. By 2022, Africa is the future. By the next 10 years, Africa is the future. By the next 20 years, Africa is the future. Still, today in 2025, we are here saying by 2050, Africa is the future. Fine, it's not a problem. Africa can be the future. But right now, Africa is not doing anything to prove that Africa is the future. When we are to talk of a certain leadership putting things in place to show that Africa can be the future, then I will consider Ibrahim Traore, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. The Sahel region. they are indeed proving that Africa can be the future. Because they are right now, as I'm speaking with you, taking in charge of their economy, their health, security, building nuclear weapons plant, preparing themselves to build their country and not to give chance for anybody to come in and take advantage of them. They are putting things in place. So when somebody says Africa is the future, yes, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, if it continues as they've started, they can be the future. And if other countries learn from them, then we can say Africa is now getting on the track to become the future. But as it stands right now, the people are hopeless, lack of job opportunity, financially handicapped, healthily, poverty, even common basic necessities. Our leadership have not been able to put things in place for the African to be proud of his continent. Spare me that kind of Africa is the future. Spare me that, okay? Yes. We've heard it time in, time out. Yeah, tia. Our leaders have said this on so many platforms, but realistically, they are not putting in any measures to prove that Africa is the future. Africa was Africa before the Gulf or the Arab countries. Talk of the United Arab Emirates. When did they started becoming whom they are now? Talk of Singapore, Malaysia. When did they started becoming whom they are now? For the past just 20, 30 years, with proper leadership, look at what the likes of Dubai, Malaysia, Singapore have become. Africa have been here since Tete. African leaders, Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, mention them, have been here since Tete. We keep on boasting of ourselves. Africa is the future. Africa is the future. Meanwhile, we are still at where we are. In fact, we are going back. We're retrogressing. And we keep on saying on world platforms that Africa is the future, Africa is the future. The white man just sat down and laughed that you guys don't know what you are saying. A continent that keeps on, that relies on borrowing. We can't put in measures to capitalize on the resources we have, to create opportunities to build our economies. No, we just give away the resources, and at the end of the day, we go and beg for loans, beg for grants, beg for, aids, and we keep on boasting of Africa is the future, Africa is the future. How are you, empowering your youth through industrialization economically? How are you building your health? How are you building your education to suit the standard of training? Training critical thinkers, training, innovators, training, technical people that have the technical know-how. How are we building this education foundation? We are just building or producing chew and poor generation, chew and poor education, chew and poor youth. Then you are telling me Africa is the future. By what means? By how? How? Why? How? It's Excellency John Dramani Mahama. I'm just being real over here. And to my fellow Ghanaians watching or listening to me, I'm just being realistically over here. Come to my country, Ghana. Africa is the future. Africa. Fine, maybe Africa can be the future, but Ghanaians will be sick in that future. When the president, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, goes out there to say Africa is the future, no doubt about that. But as it stands right now, in the next 10, 20, 30 years to that 2050, that my president is saying Africa is the future. By the time we get there, maybe majority of we Ghanaians will be sick in that future. Because as it stands now, when you come to my country, Ghana, look at what is on the screen. When you come to my country, Ghana, we are stupidly destroying all our water bodies. We are gradually destroying all our forests. And you are telling me, are we part of that future? Is Ghana part of that future? We are not serious. It's just a math talk. English. Just speak. Oh, yeah, citizens, you have been no form to the stand. Say, young Cambro na boy and some shasha. Yes, because of Nipa or more conclude intelligence with fluent English there. Utimika fluent English and you consider so intelligent there. Their thinking level, what does it tell you? Because so person catch Miss Africa is the future. I was saying who from home what you are putting in place to make sure, say, in fact, you are ready for that future. Economically, your people are running away. Health-wise, look at what is happening in your country. Your water bodies are being destroyed day in, day out. You are even afraid to take drastic measures to stop that. You are even afraid. Now look at this report. This report states high level of mercury beyond acceptable limit found in cassava in galamsey-prone areas in the Tiwa Eastern region. So in your country, Ghana, right now, which you are saying Africa is the future, by that future, certain people in your country will be sick. because cassava, by virtue of galamsey, mercury have found its way into our foodstuffs, cassava, and for that matter, many will start developing a whole lot of diseases, heart, kidney problems, all sorts of challenges, diseases, health challenges. Now the people will face that. And you are telling me we are the future. Look at this one as well. Kotombre and other foodstuffs in mining regions now contains toxic mercury, risking cancer in adults and brain damages in children. You go to the world stage to go and say Africa is the future. Africa will be the future by 2050. Meanwhile, when we come to your country, Kotombre food, vegetables are being contaminated by mercury. So in that future, you will have sick citizens. Well, citizens will not be healthy enough to enjoy that future. What kind of future are we talking about? So His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, with all due respect, yes, previous leaderships have gone to that stage, that platform to go and speak English, to go and speak flow English grammar, big grammars, which most of the citizens don't even understand. They just clap that my president is flowing English, my president is delivering a speech, but they don't critically, realistically understand what the president is saying. I mean, after even listening to what you said over there, let's compare that beautiful, nice speech to the reality in our various countries, in our continent. Zero. So please, if we indeed mean that Africa is the future, let's start from home by preventing what the threat ahead of us now, putting a stop to it. This is my candid opinion. You can also put your opinion at the comment section. My name is Ofra, the nation's uncle. I say it as it is, realistic point of view. Thank you so much. See you in my next episode. Piao. Sani obachi mi egu ni ti so sani obekora no behwe ni yie e na ma na ho ofe ewie peyo no sa pepepe nso na edan si ohwe esobo ene se de esobo no beko yie na be ma dan no ne fe ewie peyo ne senti dwumako bebre na yi wonti ni a wona wo se se obodan so enso the nation uncle after me hwehwemu no dwumako a medi ho adanse akamfo e de ama eye sky core roofing system. In fact, sky core roofing system enye nkwanchen baza wala dwumako asem na me no wokan. Sky core roofing system a certified renowned dwumako a waba eba no wodan so bo ene ehon kekan e bia de wo twa no yopo de ama wo de nti amaje sky core roofing system won dwumadi atum na medi ho adanse a kire mahwefo mabusuafo a mutie me ne se eba no wodan so bo wodi kan boso dada enwunu leakages wom afei na wo pese wo boso wo boso nchense no mode boso no nya papa wo pese wo paso na wo sa boso biem. Sky core roofing system a well experienced certified roofing expert. In fact, omobaba behwe dwumadie no na omo ne wunyina asusu ho asuggest se ne ebeko yi amawo na omotwa ne neat amawo eba no enchanse ahodo enfa modan so na one problem kra ne se enei obohu se onenam nkran ne Ghana potamu a yabobo dan ne binom so edan na yabobo so no enchanse na efe enso de obodan no so no ne nsa no ntene straightening. I'm talking about straightening. Wabodan no so nchanse na efe enso na a balance achachia sky core roofing system e the accuracy e na ye adwuma abribia no bekisha se wo twa adwuma ne neat amawo enti abushafo say ye leakages na wodan nim say afa na opesa wo boso sky core roofing system e je adwuma no etwa ne neat e de amawo me no wo ka say sky core roofing system esa e training dodo mrantie mabunu dodo a wo pesa mu sua dan so bo eho enimde no sky core roofing system esa e training enti we ma wo say enye mfichire baza wala adwumako bia na the national committee ho adanse e dia kire wo na ma negu screen no so no mepa cho eye wo dan a wo si afa na wo pesa wo boso wo boso da leakages wo problem bia ba na dan so bo ho ntoto de reach out to sky core roofing system no mo ntwa adwuma no neat ema wo fro ma ho ma na kr no ma duo no ma ba behwe ama wo across the length and breadth of Ghana omo ye adwuma ko ba bia form number no na the national committee de bone ho dance mama hwefo da dedication and action. This is sky core roofing system and then they get catch themselves who page more pan dia and one sky core roofing system. This is 0.5 material e deliver am the client all around Adema. This one comes to 30 years warranty. Within 30 years now you fading changes here there. A woman I say color in here and fade here. Then he also do it man mind near Yamao. We always say quality is remembered long after price is forgotten. For Jamal Maya near Yamao. Sky core roofing system above expectation, above the rest.
Are you traveling without an immigration lawyer on standby? Are you worried about detention? Do you sometimes think about what happens after deportation? International Traveling Tips is here to support you every step of the way. We provide expert immigration lawyers ready to guide you through the complex immigration language around the world. Detained abroad? We cover immigration bonds so you or your loved ones get swift freedom. Facing deportation? We offer pocket money to ease your travel back home. And if your visa is denied, get peace of mind with our partial visa denial refund. Visit our website at www.internationaltravelingtips.com, or you can contact ITT on +1 20 977 51136 or 059 3026 543 and 059 287 3933. International Traveling Tips. Travel smart. Stay protected. Terms and conditions apply.
I hope so. Be here. Already we are into real estate. And I drew by B. I say, your dear members, I can't your Jumana. I decided, say, 10 BR blocks I am a tall na medici my dino. I didn't know because I mean create something like this, like a block factory. I can say a bit to me the specification I pay, I high quality, a bit to me. Nti dumasia your factory bi o ha ye nwuma ye wo dumasia nyina no na ye de and we've seen say materials no ye high grade make can blocks aya ye de ye nwuma no nti say e won kran ha so ye bi factory ni bi o ha ya ye twa blocks ni bi ye de ye dwuma ye but I feel say your members do na so wa kwantu mu a at times they be kura woni ha o si obi into blog no mo fa nkoye de enkosi dan ma no. Many a times, no, say blocks na I turning your papa. Blocks no, and your papa because we wouldn't have into your Toby Biake, no nef, yamo. See, your members so here say on Benya blocks because say machines, the capacity was wrong. Until you bit to me as a whole your members account. Until you be a way transformation member now, person who see now blocks are. You try 5 inches, you try 6 inches, you try 5 inches hollow. Any 6 inches hollow. Any central pavement blocks at the cajon. Now we know you find me and cajon a quarry dozen coin any 3/8 any day. Until your blocks on air concrete. They said, was if you know why you put an air concrete and a blocks in at here. In fact, your price is far better than or more and changing now. Now you years who told the door, you say I'm a free delivery account. Until your fee said, so we will be a member, not the one here blocks. Obi to me a contact here there, but number there, o contact here. Yeah, we car. You be to me a supply at the amount. Nti ye in chat sand wa. You find me a interview BNC. Oba how bones ye near me because I don't want us to even have a me here. Say be a mistaken the bit me a mix it no. Yeah, the corridor some coin any 380 any each. And a cement is you use 32.5. You use only 42.5 on coin. Until the more you need good blocks on the sono. The more and at the home yedding.
Mami Farouk JSIK, I award Domi, Kwabina Boom Junction, Kwabina Boom Junction, opposite the Shell filling station. Mami Farouk JSIK. In fact, anything iPhone, so Pebinato, Ope brand new, Ope UK used, slightly UK used, Bura JSIK, or Kwabina, a Boom Junction. Abon sign any Shell filling station, needing you any mono. Abon sign also why JSIK or no, Bura ho. Now, when you want to auto slightly use UK iPhone now, all types now, or mobile mount, all the accessories and kautono in box I will be now. Talking of charger, screen protector, mobile mount, all these accessories. They said they were tono in box, which is unusual, which is not done so anywhere. Okoto slightly use UK phone, auto phone and I will be now. But Okoto JSI Care, they will give you quality charger, original charger. They will give you screen protector. They will give you cover. It's mesre. Upebina 2, screen protector, anything iPhone, anything iPad, anything enter JSIK. I work Kwabina. Our number in the screen is on 026 73 70010 026 73 70010. Bura JSIK. I work Kwabina ma boom junction.
Follow us on Facebook, Ofayal, the nation's uncle. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nation's Uncle TV. Follow us on TikTok, The Nation's Uncle. The Nation's Uncle gives you the raw truth. Thanks for watching.